I'd lived in my quiet suburban neighborhood for years without much excitement. That changed the day a moving truck parked next door and a woman about my age, maybe late 30s, stepped out. Her name was Claire. Within the first week, she knocked on my door holding an empty measuring cup. "Sorry to bother you," she said with a shy smile. "I'm making cookies, but I ran out of sugar. Could I borrow some?" Of course, I obliged. I didn't think much of it, neighbors borrowed things all the time. But over the next month, Claire came back again and again. Sometimes it was sugar. Other times flour, milk, or even just a teaspoon of cinnamon. She always chatted for a minute but never shared much about herself. I knew she was divorced, lived alone, and worked from home. That was it. At first, I thought she just liked baking. But I started noticing something strange. Whenever she visited, she seemed distracted. Like she was listening for something else in the distance. And then one evening, she knocked again, this time with no measuring cup at all. "Can I come in for just a minute?" she asked, glancing nervously over her shoulder. That's when I realized her constant visits weren't about sugar at all. That I stepped aside and let Claire in. She stood just inside the doorway, her hands clasped tightly together. Her eyes kept darting toward my front window, like she was expecting someone to appear outside. "You okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. She hesitated. "Yeah. I just needed a second to breathe." I offered her some tea, hoping to help her relax. She sat at the kitchen table but didn't touch the mug I placed in front of her. Instead, she kept twisting her wedding ring finger, except there was no ring there anymore. Finally, I asked, "Claire, is something going on? You've been coming over a lot lately, and not just for sugar." Her lips pressed into a thin line. She shook her head quickly. "It's nothing. Just, sometimes it's nice to have a reason to talk to someone." I nodded, but I wasn't convinced. There was a tension in her voice, a kind of tremor that didn't match her words. Before I could press further, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and her face instantly paled. She stood so quickly her chair scraped the floor. "I should go," she whispered. Then she rushed out the door without another word. When I looked out the window, I caught sight of a black sedan idling down the street. The driver's face was hidden in shadow. And in that moment, I knew, whatever Claire was hiding, it wasn't small. After Claire disappeared back into her house, I stayed by the window, pretending to tidy up my blinds but really keeping an eye on that black sedan. It didn't move. The engine idled, faint exhaust curling into the cool evening air. Whoever was inside wasn't there by accident, they were watching. Minutes passed. 10, 15, 20. I finally stepped outside with a bag of trash, just to see if I could get a better look without being obvious. The car's tinted windows made it impossible to see inside, but I could feel the weight of someone's gaze following me. I dropped the trash in the bin and forced myself to walk back calmly, though my stomach felt like it was tying itself in knots. That night, I couldn't shake the image of Claire's pale face when she saw her phone. Who had messaged her? And why did that car show up right after? The next day, I decided to casually bring it up when I saw her. Around noon, I spotted her out front, clipping roses in her yard. I walked over, but the moment she saw me, she glanced toward the street again, like she was checking for that same car. "Claire," I said carefully, "I saw someone sitting out there last night. They were there a long time. Do you know them?" She froze, her hand still gripping the shears. "That car," she said quietly, "it's been following me for weeks." Before I could respond, her phone buzzed again in her pocket. She looked at it, and I swear her hands trembled. "They know where I am," she whispered. "And if they find what's hidden, everything will fall apart." Her words sent a chill down my spine. "Claire, what's hidden?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She glanced toward her house, as if even saying it outside was dangerous. I can't tell you here. Just, come over tonight. After dark. That evening, I found myself walking next door at exactly 9 p.m. The street was quiet, but I couldn't shake the feeling we were being watched. Claire opened the door quickly, ushering me inside before locking it behind us. The blinds were already drawn tight. Without a word, she led me down the hallway to a door I'd never noticed before. It looked like an ordinary storage closet. She opened it, revealing coats hanging in neat rows, until she pushed them aside. Behind them was a narrow panel in the wall. She slid it open, and my jaw dropped. A hidden room. Inside, the space was dimly lit by a single desk lamp. Stacks of paper covered the small desk, along with an old laptop, several flash drives, and a thick folder marked, "Confidential," in red letters. Claire's voice was barely above a whisper. "This is why they're watching me. My ex-husband thinks I destroyed everything when we divorced. I didn't. These are documents, proof, that he's been stealing from people for years. Millions." I stared at the papers, the realization hitting me like a punch. "And that car outside?" I asked. She swallowed hard. "Not just him. He has people who will do anything to get this back." Before I could speak, a faint sound came from outside, a slow crunch of footsteps on gravel. Someone was in her yard. The sound was so faint I thought at first I'd imagined it. But then it came again, slow, deliberate crunches in the gravel, circling the side of Claire's house. Her eyes widened. She reached over and turned off the desk lamp, plunging the hidden room into shadow. We both held our breath. Through the thin walls, I could hear the faint hum of the black sedan's engine, closer than before. My mind raced. Whoever was outside had left the car and was now here. Claire leaned in so close I could feel her breath on my ear. "There's a back exit from this room. If anything happens, you run. Don't try to help me, just take the folder and go." I shook my head, whispering back, "I'm not leaving you here." We froze as a shadow passed by the small gap under the door to the hallway. Whoever it was had come inside. Claire's phone vibrated in her pocket. She pulled it out and glanced at the screen. The message was short, chilling: "You can't hide forever." Then came the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps moving through the house. The creak of floorboards. A pause. Another creak. They were getting closer to the hidden door. Claire's hands gripped mine in the dark. I could feel her trembling. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure they could hear it. And then, 3 loud knocks on the wall outside the hidden room. The knocks echoed through the cramped space, each one slow and deliberate, like they weren't just knocking, they were letting us know they knew. Claire's grip on my hand tightened until my fingers went numb. Neither of us moved. Then, a man's voice came from the other side of the wall. Smooth. Cold. "Claire. I know you're in there." My pulse jumped. She didn't answer, but I could feel her shaking harder. "You've had your little game," the voice continued. "But now it's over. Open the door, and maybe I won't tear this place apart looking for you." I glanced at the hidden exit in the corner, a narrow metal hatch leading into darkness. Claire followed my gaze but shook her head slightly. "If we run now, he'll know we have the evidence," she whispered. The footsteps shifted, moving toward the closet entrance. The sound of a doorknob rattling reached us, followed by the scrape of hangers being pushed aside. He was inches away from the hidden panel. And then, another sound. A loud, sharp knock from the front door of the house. The man outside the panel froze. We could hear the front door open, followed by a commanding voice, "Police. We need to talk to you about some suspicious activity in the neighborhood." Claire's eyes met mine. She mouthed a single word, "Now." She grabbed the folder, shoved it into my hands, and pulled me toward the hatch. Claire yanked open the hatch, and a rush of cold, damp air hit my face. The narrow tunnel beyond was barely tall enough to crawl through, its dirt walls pressing in on both sides. We dropped to our hands and knees, moving fast but as quietly as possible. Behind us, muffled voices clashed, the smooth, cold tone of the man and the firm, clipped authority of the police. I couldn't tell if the officers were really here for him, or for her. The tunnel twisted, the light from Claire's phone our only guide. At one point, she stopped and pressed a finger to her lips. Above us, faintly through the ground, we heard footsteps. Someone was walking over the backyard. We kept going until a faint square of moonlight appeared ahead. Claire pushed open a small wooden hatch, and we emerged behind a thick row of hedges at the far end of her property. From here, we could see the black sedan still idling on the street, but now another police cruiser was parked behind it. Two officers stood by the cruiser, speaking to the driver, who remained completely still, his face hidden in the dark. Claire pulled me deeper into the shadows. "We can't go to my place. He's got people watching everywhere. We need somewhere safe." I thought fast. "My garage. It's detached, no one can see inside from the street." She nodded, and we slipped away through the neighbor's yard, every creak of a branch and crunch of leaves sounding like an alarm in the night. When we finally reached my garage and locked the door, Claire leaned against the wall, breathing hard. She pulled the folder from under her coat and looked at me. "If we can get this to the right person," she said, "we can end this. But it has to be someone we can trust completely." Before I could respond, a faint vibration came from her phone again. She checked the screen, and her face went pale. The message was just 2 words, "Wrong move." The words on Claire's phone burned into my mind. Wrong move. We stood in silence, the only sound the faint hum of the streetlight outside. Then, 3 sharp knocks echoed from the garage door. Claire's eyes widened. "No one knows we're here," she whispered. The knocks came again, slower this time. Whoever it was, wasn't in a hurry. They knew we'd open eventually. I crept to the side window, careful not to make a sound, and peeked through the sliver of glass. A man stood in the shadows, his hands shoved into the pockets of a heavy coat. His head was down, but he seemed familiar. When I stepped back, Claire grabbed my arm. "That's not him," she whispered. She stopped mid-sentence and hurried to the door, but didn't open it. "Who is it?" she called softly. A voice answered, low and urgent. "It's Daniel. Claire, you need to let me in. Now." Her hand trembled on the latch. "Daniel is my brother," she said quickly. "I didn't tell you about him because I thought he was safe." Against my better judgment, she pulled the door open. A tall man stepped inside, immediately locking it behind him. He looked tense, scanning the garage before speaking. "They know you've still got the files," he said, his voice tight. "And they're not just watching you anymore. They're watching me." Claire's face drained of color. "Then how did you find us?" Daniel hesitated. "Because I followed the man in the black sedan. And I saw where he went after the police left." "Where?" I asked. Daniel's jaw tightened. "Your house." The air in the garage felt suddenly heavier, like every breath took effort. "My house?" I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Daniel nodded. 2 men went around the side yard after the sedan left. No police, no neighbors watching, just them. They didn't knock. They were looking for a way in. Claire's gaze shot to me. "If they think the folder is there, they'll tear the place apart," Daniel finished grimly. We didn't waste another second. Daniel led the way, sticking to the narrow shadows between houses. Every rustle of leaves made me tense. My own home was only a block away, but the walk felt like miles. When we rounded the corner to my street, my stomach dropped. My porch light was on, but the front door stood slightly open. Daniel motioned for us to stay back. He slipped ahead, silent as a shadow, disappearing inside while Claire and I waited in the darkness of the driveway. My heart pounded so hard it was almost painful. A minute passed. Then another. Finally, Daniel reappeared, his expression grim. "They're gone." "But they were here. I found muddy footprints in your kitchen and," he hesitated. "And something else." He held up a single playing card, a queen of hearts, with 2 words written across it in black marker, "Next time." Claire took the card from him with shaking hands. "This isn't a warning," she whispered. "It's a promise." Daniel glanced between us. "Then we don't wait for next time. We make our move first." We gathered in my living room, blinds drawn tight. The Queen of Hearts lay on the coffee table between us, like a silent threat. Daniel leaned forward, his voice low but urgent. "They're careful, but they're not ghosts. If we move fast, we can get this folder to someone who'll act before your ex-husband knows what's happening." Claire hesitated. "I've tried going to the police before. Every time, someone loses the paperwork. My ex has friends everywhere." Daniel's eyes hardened. "Then we don't go to the police." He turned to me. "Do you know anyone you trust with your life?" I thought for a moment. "Maybe. A friend of mine, Mark, works in investigative journalism. The kind of guy who double-locks his sources and doesn't scare easy." Daniel nodded. "Good. But we can't just hand this over in public. We need a neutral spot, somewhere no one would expect." Claire's eyes lit up. "The old lighthouse by the marina. It's been closed for years, nobody goes there at night." Daniel liked the idea, but he added, "We still need a decoy. If they're watching you, we can't lead them straight to the drop." We worked out the plan quickly. I'd meet Mark at the lighthouse while Claire stayed hidden. Daniel would run interference, drawing the sedan's attention in the opposite direction. Before we could finalize it, a loud thud came from the back of the house. All 3 of us froze. Daniel reached for the small crowbar I kept by the door. He glanced at me, his voice a whisper. "They're early." The thud came again, followed by the faint rattle of the back doorknob. Someone was testing it, quietly, carefully. Daniel moved toward the kitchen with the crowbar in hand, his steps silent. Claire and I followed, staying low. Through the narrow gap between the blinds, I caught a glimpse of movement. 2 figures in dark clothing stood at the back door. One of them had something metallic in his hand, a thin tool he slid into the lock. A quiet click echoed in the stillness. The door swung open. Daniel motioned for us to stay hidden behind the counter. We watched as the first man stepped inside, scanning the room with a small flashlight. The second man stayed in the doorway, keeping watch. They moved with practiced precision, heading straight for the living room, as if they already knew exactly where to look. I realized with a sick feeling they were searching for the folder. Daniel waited until the first man turned his back, then lunged forward. He swung the crowbar down hard, knocking the flashlight to the floor with a metallic clatter. The second man rushed in, but I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a heavy ceramic vase, and smashed it across his forearm. He grunted in pain but didn't drop the tool in his other hand. Claire shouted, "Go," and shoved me toward the hallway. She clutched the folder to her chest, sprinting toward the front door. But before she could reach it, the man Daniel had hit grabbed her by the arm. "You're not going anywhere," he hissed. Then, from outside, the screech of tires tore through the night. Headlights flooded the front window, the headlights cut through the blinds like blades of white light, blinding everyone in the room for a split second. Daniel used the distraction to shove the man off Claire. She stumbled forward, still clutching the folder, as the front door burst open. "Mark?" I blurted. My friend stood there, breathing hard, his phone pressed to his ear. "I called in a favor," he said. "State investigators are on their way, people your ex-husband can't buy." The 2 intruders froze, sizing up the new arrival. Then the man nearest the back door bolted, disappearing into the night. The other tried to follow, but Daniel caught him by the jacket and slammed him against the wall until the sound of approaching sirens filled the air. Minutes later, unmarked cars pulled up, and plainclothes officers swarmed the house. Mark handed the folder to one of them, murmuring something I couldn't hear. They took it like it was solid gold. Claire stood in the middle of the chaos, her hands trembling, but her eyes looked lighter than I'd ever seen them. "It's over," she whispered, as if trying to convince herself. Daniel gave a faint smile. "Not yet. But it will be soon." By the next morning, the news had broken wide open. Claire's ex-husband was facing multiple charges, and investigators had connected him to a ring of people who'd been watching, threatening, and silencing anyone with evidence. A week later, Claire came by my house, holding a small bag of sugar. "Thought I'd return this," she said with a grin. I laughed. "No hidden meaning this time?" She shook her head. "Nope. Just cookies. And maybe, a fresh start." This time, when she left, there were no cars watching from the street. Just the quiet of a neighborhood finally at peace.